Jack, let's get into the flavor of the month, which is a very important flavor, an enduring flavor that sometimes gets lost from time to time. A couple of years ago, you conceived of and edited a book that included chapters by prominent chief executive officers on the subject of integrity, corporate character, whatever you want to call it. And I don't want you to get out of here without talking a little bit about what did you learn from those chapters submitted by CEOs, or what had you hoped to learn and didn't? Either way you want to look at the question. How do you institutionalize integrity? How do you insinuate that into a large organization?
Well, there are several answers to that question, and the first thing I like to say is that Building Trust was written as a project of the Page Society, yes. And it was done really as a response to the headlines denoting week after week or month after month corporate corruption, dishonesty, and really acts of real criminal negligence in several cases. And in a speech that Jeffrey Garten, who was at that time the dean of Yale, made, that he said all that America needs, or business needs, is for a dozen CEOs to speak up about what they're doing in their businesses, and that will begin to quiet this furor of and feeling that all American business is dishonest and crooked. So the Page Society took that to heart and felt that there's one of the things that we were very much for, because the very first principle in the Page Society, which Arthur Page articulated, was tell the truth. And we believed that wholeheartedly. We subscribed to it, and all of our members did that. So it became apparent that this was something that we could do, and that maybe we could help the reputation of American business by taking on this activity. So consequently, because I was at that time in a retired state, though my wife wouldn't necessarily agree with that, I agreed to take on the responsibility of trying to put that book together. It was done with the help, of course, Dave Drobus, who was then the president of the Page Society, and Ron Culp, and many others really contributed to helping to make it happen. One of the things that became clear to me, and we, as it turned out, we wound up with essays from 23 CEOs that were included in the book. Actually, my idea was to have 24, which would be 24, which was twice what Jeffrey Garten had said. But incredibly, at the very last minute, as we were going on the press, one of the best essays and one of the best by one of the CEOs that I happen to personally like the best, called me up and said that our company is going, he was a major shareholder in the company, he said our company's going through an enormously difficult time here, and we're going to reorganize, and I'm not sure where I'm going to be when the reorganization is all over. And so he said, I just don't think that it would be in your best interest to have me in a book that's coming out in 6 months or a year from now, because I'm not sure what my fate's going to be. And so I learned that this was typical of him up front, integrity, honest, here's an alert. Not every CEO would have done that. Some CEOs would have tried to fly under cover, and because they felt that they wanted to be part of this mixed group of outstanding CEOs. I think that the thing that I learned, that there's no question that in a major corporation, and even a minor corporation, if there is such a thing, that the CEO sets the tone. If the CEO's behavior is above board, there's a good chance that will filter down through the organization. It isn't going to happen automatically, but if there's any question about the behavior of the CEO, the employees are going to look at this with a jaundiced eye. I think one of the best examples is what happened with Boeing and Harry Stonecipher, who was an absolutely terrific CEO, but got caught up in a couple of situations which were not in the best interests of the Boeing company, and he was forced to resign, which he did. His replacement at the first meeting that they had the senior management team after that meeting call them all together, and the chief lawyer put up on the screen photos of there were two deposed senior people at Boeing. They had their headshots on there, and under the headshots were a whole row of numbers. And the chief general counsel said, "You all know that those are not Social Security numbers. They're under that." And with that, McNerney, who was the new CEO, said, and he said, "That is precisely what will happen to anyone who violates our code of conduct and expectations for truthful behavior." He said, "I want that to be understood right now, and you're hearing it from me." And that was a vivid illustration. I have several friends who work for Boeing, and they told me if there was ever a message delivered, that was really well done. Well, in other companies, it was clear, like in the Eaton company with Cutler, he right after he took over the job, that he was confronted with one of his officers in Asia, the head of their actually Asian operation, who was awarding contracts to a firm that his wife was involved with without putting them out for bids. When he learned that, he was the best operating guy he had in the whole company. Bong, he was fired. He then explained to the employees of the Eaton Corporation that this is not a 3 strikes you're out company. He said 1 strike and you're out. Those kind of messages resonate through the corporations. Other corporations, and Bill Walden from J&J is a good example, have a long history of having a code of ethics or a code of conduct that they go over annually with all of their employees to make sure they understand. So there's a long history of that sort of thing. And consequently, you kind of expect them to have this, and you learn that there is value in having a code of conduct or a set of basic principles. But the thing is, and I think that you agree with this, is that you can have all the code of conducts that you want in your corporation, but when it gets right down to it, it's the individual who makes the difference. If the individual is raised in an environment where they're taught the difference between right and wrong, that's likely to carry over throughout their lives, and they'll have that understanding. And no form of persuasion, one way or the other, will cause them to do other. There are other borderline cases that can be persuaded one way or the other, but basically having a code of conduct is they know that they're violating it, but that doesn't necessarily prevent them from doing it if they see in our culture today that somehow or other it's in their personal best interests. And I think that's one of the things that I learned, that again, this whole sense of greed and the me now generation, that you can have all the teachings, whether they're from the Bible or the Koran or whatever, about proper behavior, but in our culture today, those can be easily ignored if there are people who feel that they can gain somehow personally from this. A person like Marilyn Carlson, who headed up the Carlson Companies, said something that struck me as being
in the book.
In the book that was really significant. She says that this is basically a family company, and she's the generation that's running it now. She said that if we expect and want our employees to keep this company alive and preserve it for we have to treat them like we're running this business for long term. We have to respect their rights, their individual rights, and what their needs are. And if we can do that, then they will help us perpetuate this company. If we don't, in a generation or two, she said, we won't be able to keep this company going.
I think you nailed the answer as I expected. And I will close out by just one last comment about Mr. Page. The things that we call the Page principles that animate the Page Center at Penn State and animate the Page Society and brought it into being, is that his genius was horse sense, believe it or not. And, you know, when principle number one is tell the truth, you know, he didn't mean sometime. He meant if it's convenient. White lies are okay. I mean, he could nail it. And another principle, that effective public relations, and we can substitute the word corporate governance, is 90% doing and 10% talking about it. So as you said, it doesn't make any difference how beautifully worded your code of conduct is if no one pays any attention to it. And that, of course, was the genius of General Johnson and the Johnson & Johnson credo, because it wasn't something on the wall or on the dashboard of a company car. It's a living document that the management not only manages by, but rates itself against those simple propositions, you know, that General Johnson, just like Page, put in that credo that basically said our obligation is to our customers and to caregivers, and that comes first. And basically, at the last thing in the credo, you know, is if we do all of the above diligently, successfully, the share owners will be well taken care of. He did not put the share owners at the top. We have to optimize their income or anything like that. It was all about the customers, employees, and the communities in which the company did business. To do right by all of them, and we'll make out fine on the bottom line. So we'll let it go at that, but keep it simple. Integrity is not something off in the ether. It's what you do every day.
Right.
And who knows what you're doing. Yeah. Thanks, Jack, for sitting in on this.
Well, thank you very much, Ed. Appreciate it.